Wim has more than 24 years of experience in software testing, during which he has developed into a versatile generalist with different aspects: people and operational management, technical implementation, service delivery, and pre-sales. Driven by versatility, down-to-earth and pragmatic attitude, Wim always looks at how and where he can stretch his comfort zone to take on new challenges. And now we're going to hear a speech about what's not been learned from the books. Wim, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. How are you doing? I hope you applaud also at the end of my speech. Okay, thank you for joining, and I will tell something about what I did not learn from books on software testing, which may sound weird. And lately I was in the local library, which you see a picture of it. And I really like the atmosphere of a library. So the silence, so the sense of old books sniffing. And by walking through the racks, I was thinking, if you would put all those books here on one pile, which massive amount of data should be available? Which massive amount of wisdom should be available to everyone? And that's exactly the same in testing. If you see how testing has evolved over the last decades, then we have plenty information. We have plenty amount of information. And like said in the introduction, I started in Belgium. I'm working and living in Belgium. I started in testing in the late 90s, so about 24 years ago. And then I had only one book, the blue one, so the TMAP book. And this was my Bible. The TMAP book, I was trained to test according to TMAP. TMAP, for your information, it's like ICQB, so structured testing based on the V model. And it was in my backpack at every project. And when I didn't find the answer on something, I just look it up in a book, I applied, and I could go on. And so, especially with the evolution of technologies, the information has exploded. Today, we have not only this kind of books, we have blogs, we have channels on YouTube. Whatever testing tool, you just look for a course online, you can follow whatever you want. And then if someone would come to me and say, hey, I'm a tester, I have an issue, I have a question, I don't know how to deal with it, I don't find an answer on it in the available information, then I can say, how dare you? How dare you to ask me, we have so many information and you don't find it? Well, I disagree. It's right. In some cases, you don't find the answer in the books. And that's exactly what I want to share in this talk with you. I'm going to share 5 messages with you. What I learned during my journey in testing so far, based on projects, based on my insights. And to be explicit, I don't tell you the truth, not at all. It's my perspective, it's my view, and it's either right as yours. And if you, after the speech, if you fully disagree, please come to me. Let's talk, let's exchange about ideas. Okay, 5 messages. Message 1, transform to a no-sheep tester. What is this? What do we have in common with sheep? I am in the right presentation because look at this. How cute are those sheep? It seems that maybe I took an image of a book for children with some cute sheep. Yeah, they are looking nice. But the sheep, it's us testers. We are the sheep, me, you, everyone in the room, we are the sheep. And why are we the sheep? Just think at the sound of a sheep, especially a bleating sheep, the meh. We are bleating. We are bleating testers all over the time in our projects. No documentation, no test data, no automation, and so on. So yes, according to the book, according to the TMA book, I have the right to complain and to bleed all over the time. But will this make me the most nice colleague in a team? No. And to tell you an anecdote, I was working once in a testing team, and there was one guy, Mark was the name, and he was bleeding all over the time, and he was hitting the same nail every day. And it was a running gag that during the team meeting we know, okay, give 5 minutes to Mark in the beginning of the meeting, then that's the bleeding 5 minutes, and then we can really discuss about the topics of the project. But the problem with Mark was after 2 weeks, he was completely ignored. Nobody was listening anymore. Maybe the only valid reason to bleed about, especially when winter is coming, is I'm hungry and I'm half cold. So maybe that's the only valid reason. And we don't know, but we testers, to deal with this kind of imperfections, we have the means in our own hands. What do you think about exploratory testing? That's exactly the way how you can test if documentation is vague, is not well complete. Just start. Just don't wait until everything is delivered. Start, do a session with the key users and provide feedback. Smoke and sanity test. There is no one who tells you as a tester if the developers have delivered a new build that you have blindly to jump, race through your test execution to experience that after test case 30 of the 50, you are completely stuck because quality is not good. No. Define some sanity, some smoke testing, test, execute them, and if they don't pass, go back to the developers. And don't just say, okay, not good, I sit down, I wait. No. Look together with the team, what can we do? Can we test another system? Can we test another user story in between? Selfies test data. Yeah, that's for me one of the most underestimated tasks of a project. Preparing your environment, it's cost so many efforts, so many time. And if you don't have the data you need, then you can maybe use test automation. Test automation can help you just to create the data to bring you at the start of the execution of your manual test case. Or what in some projects I did, it's not always possible, I entered all the test customers I needed through the UI, which give you the benefit that indirectly you do already a test of the UI. So you have an additional benefit. And especially apply the agile mindset. Iterate small. Don't just wait. Try it, try out, give it back to your developer, to your analyst. And if you apply those 4 things, it will help you to transform to a no-sheep tester and to stop bleeding. Second message. Fail fast in production before passing slow in test. If I would have, now the famous word is out, testing in production. Oh my God, how dare you? If I would have presented this 10 years ago, I think I would be banned from any conference at all. Maybe they would stamp me, this guy, he's completely not professional at all. He pretends he is daring to say that we have to test in production. How insane can you be to test in production? That's totally according to the book. Well, I think it isn't. And if you follow some latest trends in testing, you see more and more trends to say, okay, in some cases, maybe it can give you some benefits to test into production and not to try to set it up in your test environment, struggling with the setup. And that's for me what I call modern QA. And in modern QA, the question is not if you will test in production. The question is more when you should test in production. Because of course, Don't get me wrong. Don't run out. Don't go to your office tomorrow and say, yeah, we heard the Belgian guy, he was telling, yeah, go, we test in production. No, no. You can do, but of course it needs to be in a controlled way. And in which cases should you test in production? 4 use cases: complex environments, setting up microservices, APIs is often very hard to set it up. Especially if you work with third parties, they don't have always a corresponding test environment, so it's hard to have all those interfaces. So that can be a reason to try to do a test in production. Performance testing and scalability. And recently I was doing such a project, and it was an e-commerce web shop. We defined with the customer 5 scenarios. 3 were what we call navigation, browsing through the shop, browsing to the products. And 2 scenarios were what we call data entry, making an order, do the checkout, and so on. Of course, the customer, in the initial plan, he told us, we have to do it in a test environment. We can't do it in production. Okay. Problem was the test environment was not up and running. They had really difficulties to get it up. So to gain some time, the customer proposed to us, let's do our navigation scenarios. Let's do the performance test in production because, okay, it's just navigation, it's browsing, so we don't expect any problem. We did it. And even those navigation scenarios, they revealed some huge performance issues. And thanks to this test in production, we revealed anyway a huge performance issue with the whole architecture of the solution, which was delivered by a third party. And so the customer realized, if we have already now performance issue by just browsing, what will it give with the data entry? And those tests were done in a very controlled way. It was after business hours. And first time he asked, okay, just schedule them during the night. And we say, no, we don't gonna do that. We will do a first small test. If the results are not good, we stop. And then only in case they are good, we can launch manually the second one. Now, of course, you can imagine first test was not good, so we stopped at all the campaign. And another reason why it was good to do that test in production, because we did a small test into the test environment as well, and we get very high response times. But we were a little bit fooled because the setup and the configuration of the test environment was totally not sized and compared to production. So it was due to the setup and configuration. So if we wouldn't have done this test in production, we would have discovered these issues much more later in the project. When can you do testing in production to evaluate usability? If you want to check out, okay, what will it give if we change items in the menu, if we change the colors, that's something you can do in a safe way, test it in production. And another recent trend that you see more and more is chaos engineering. I don't know if you are familiar with chaos engineering, but briefly explained, it's causing disruptions on purpose. It's, for example, just pulling out network cables from servers. It's just shutting down servers and see what are the systems doing and what happens if you pull up the systems afterwards, and if, for example, some queues are shut down, are they retaking all the messages that were on the queues? And a typical way of a typical mechanism that is used to test and to support testing and production is what is through the mechanism of feature flagging. So by code, so then you can do A/B testing. That's especially relevant, for example, if you want to evaluate if I deliver a mobile application or a website and I change something in the UI, will it give me more conversion? Will the users click more through and further navigate and buy things on my site instead of not offering or changing the UI. So that's what we call A/B testing. Another thing which is quite famous and well known is a canary release, where we deliver a new version of an application or release to a small amount of the business of the end users. You can do that technically by changing things on the load balancer so that only a small portion of your end users are getting the new version. You monitor this for a certain period, for example, a week, 2 weeks. You see what is coming out. And if you see, okay, that is working well, then gradually you can evolve from the small part of users to a bigger part until your complete population is on the new version. So that are techniques that are typically used to support testing in production. The third message is hope for the worst, fear for the best. This sounds again so weird because the real phrase should be contrary. Well, it's my belief, at least if I speak for myself, I learned the most from the most shitty projects. And that's linked with an anecdote. My first 2 projects ever as a tester. So, you know, I was taught to apply the TEMA book. First project, fully according to the book. Can you imagine? I got the time to put a book next to me, look up which test design techniques I needed, calculate on paper, apply all those rules in the decision table techniques and all those things, tell to my test coordinator, give me 2 days, and then at the end of the 2 days, I tell you how many test cases we will need. And in the 2 days, I was applying all the techniques, writing down on paper. That was the only one and last project I ever had the time to apply test design techniques in that detail. So then I thought, testing, yeah, that's the ideal world. Next project, same customer, then you would think, okay, that's a customer who is mature. It was hell. It was chaos. We had a test coordinator, but he was fully overruled by the head of the users. And that guy, he didn't know anything about testing. And now I always remember me the funny thing he asked me. At that moment, it was not funny for me, but we had a kind of a batch job running, processing based on rules. And then we had an outcome. And then he asked us, the testers, hey guys, based on the outcome, write some test cases. And I said, okay, with the TEMA book, no, that's not the right way. We had to do it otherwise. We had to first define the test case and describe the expected result. No, you have the results, write the test case. So at the time, I was the bleating sheep, and I was bleating so hard, I was calling the account manager. I said, get me out of this hell. This is not TEMA, this is shitty. And of course, the account manager tell me, okay, Wim, please take a day off, do something else, take some rest, some sleep, but the customer paid for you to be there and to stay there. And then I went to all this kind of emotions. And these are for me the emotions we are experiencing as tester. Sometimes, yeah, it's happy, we find a bug, yes. Sometimes we are sad, we are mad, we are angry. Maybe we are demotivated. Maybe we think, what other job I can do, which is more funny than testing. But that is what we are typically going through. And if it's really bad, then you go several times a day through the whole curve of emotions. If you are lucky, maybe it's a curve that starts like a year here, goes like this, and then at the end of the year, you pass through all emotions. What can help is what I called resilience. Resilience, what is resilience for me? That's the way how someone is standing up in tough situations. How strong are you to get out, to stand up, not to stay demotivated? And reflecting about all this kind of manifestos, I have written my own manifesto. I call it the Resilience Manifesto. Let's look at it. First statement: become skilled at taking risks over defining risks and mitigations. Think at your last test plan. Probably it is full of this kind of what if scenarios. What if happened this? What are the mitigations? What are the risks? And it's safe to write this up to the moment you are really confronted with this kind of situation. And then you have to take a decision. And then it's like sitting around the table and then, you look to your neighbor. Okay, do you say something? Which risk do we take? No. Resilience means, okay, if it's tough, you have to take risks, knowing this is a situation, it's not perfect, these are the alternatives, and at each decision, there are risks related. So dare to take really the risk. Second, value what you have over insisting on entry, exit, or acceptance criteria. That refers to the sheep tester. The bleating sheep tester is say, sorry, I can't start testing because according to my plan, my entry criteria said you need to pass this and this and this, no defects open. No, I can't start, I wait. No. Sometimes when I work with young professionals in my team, I say to them, okay, you have to deal with imperfection. Don't try to move the rock of the stone in a river, but try to find a way around. And that's much more challenging, and that's where you can excel in thinking out of the box, what we should do as tester, by using your creativity. So just accept what you have and see what can I make the best of it. Accept and learn from failures over striving for zero fault tolerance. Normally, before you go to production, the number of defects, outstanding defects, should be 0. But reality says, often you have plenty defects open, and then you have those famous no-go meeting from quality. You say, no, we can't. Business say, maybe we can't, but we should go to in production. But maybe you have to take a step back and think, what is acceptable? When do we have some outstanding defects, and which can be acceptable and manageable from a risk point of view? Last one is a very important one. Compassion for the stakeholders. Just try to think, if you feel resistance against decisions, try to understand why is someone acting like this. An anecdote, I was working in a project with a developer from a third party. And in every status meeting, this guy was trying to nail me down. And he was always fighting about the status of the defects and the severity. And it goes on weeks after weeks, and at a certain point I was so frustrated. And after the meeting, the guy was calling Fabio. I say, hey Fabio, why are you doing like this? Because outside the work, we had often a lunch, we take a beer. He's really a nice guy. But I say, in that meeting, why are you doing so? And then he said to him, I will explain you. We have a contract with the customer. In that contract, there are very high penalties. If we deliver a release with outstanding defects, based on this severity, then we get a high penalty. And I got the orders from my management to try to minimize every defect that you will raise, that you will create in a tool. And then I understood that Fabio, he didn't have something against me personally. It was not something personally. He just had to take up his role to act according to what was expected. Okay, that was not funny for me. But then it makes it clear for me, okay, now I understand you, why you are doing so. And this can overcome a lot of your frustrations. Try to listen, try to understand why is business pushing to go into production. In another project we had the same. Go-no-go meeting, we were completely overruled by the business. And then they explained, yeah, marketing has launched a campaign. It was in Belgium the first time that you had the number portability between providers. So it's a long time ago. So the media was full of it. But then marketing didn't realize that it took more time to develop all the systems and adapt the systems. But yeah, they couldn't recall the campaign. So, resilient manifesto. Fourth message. Rain always falls down from clouds. Yeah. Logic, isn't it? When if I have discussions or talks with customers, especially those ones that are moving to the cloud or into this kind of cloud migration project, I have often the feeling that for customers, the cloud is magic. So we put everything in the cloud and all the problems are disappearing. So no problem anymore, because you can scale up whatever you want. And then sometimes I told to one customer, hey guy, but maybe you forget that there is some smog and fog in the cloud and you don't see the problems anymore, or you don't want to see them. So anyway, cloud migrations and cloud testing, that is not always the holy grail, or at least there are some things you have to be aware about it. And first thing, for me, it's very confusing. If you look on websites about cloud testing, vendors that are pretending whenever to do a cloud testing, but what is cloud testing? What is cloud testing? I see three different kind of notions of cloud testing. First one, it can be that you have to test the cloud resources itself. For example, if you have to choose between a platform to create test environments, Azure or Amazon, maybe it can be a good test that you look at what are the capabilities, what are the functionalities, what are the price plans. And this reminds me, last year I was at a conference where two people were talking about this journey. And they had to do performance testing using the cloud. So they thought, well, it's easy peasy. We just subscribe, account, we spin up the machines. And then they experienced a lot of issues in their performance test, and they saw at some time they had a limit. They couldn't send any load more than they had in mind. And then they explained that due to the price tier they took, there were some limitations. I didn't know anymore which plan it was, but it couldn't send any more messages than for that plan. So finally, the investigation revealed that they have to have a higher test plan, a higher tier than they had in mind. And they said if we would have done better in investigation or comparison of the tools, then maybe we should have chosen for another platform. Cloud testing can also be testing systems which are hosted in the cloud. And today you have, for example, a Salesforce which is fully hosted in the cloud. Maybe your customer has an application which is hosted, which is working today on premise and which is moved to the cloud. That's another notion of cloud testing. And the last notion is cloud testing as using cloud-based tools to support your testing. For example, you can do performance testing with Blazemeter, Octoperf, and those tools are fully hosted in the cloud. You can manage the load injectors through the cloud. But you see different notions, and I experience in projects to make sure that everyone understands the same. Because at least depending the notion, you have to deal with some challenges. For example, multi-tenancy, that can really impacting your performance testing. In the cloud, your customer or your project is not the only project, so you are using the same infrastructure, and maybe your results can be impacted by traffic which is happening in another tenant. Lack of control. Maybe I don't know, but if you want to do a performance test on a Salesforce environment, you have to provide your test plan to Salesforce upfront. So you cannot just say, okay, I will do some scripting, I will launch it. No. A colleague of mine, he said, yeah, why? Do you know why they are? I don't know if it's true, but can sound realistic. He said they are asking you because then they will know when you plan your performance test, then they will assure that you have powerful resources and you don't experience performance issues. I don't know if it's true, but can be. The hidden cost, that relates to the example I just explained about that presentation of last year. Security and privacy. In some customers, we had a project, and the customer is using a cloud system which is hosted by a third party, and they connected that cloud system to their systems on premise. And they asked us, okay, you need to do some performance tests. So we proposed we want to do the full end-to-end testing. And the third party said no. So we explained them, okay, you need to give us some control, you need to open some ports so that we can simulate the load. And they say, no, we don't give you the control. You just can test up to the entry point of the cloud and that's it. But what is happening inside, that's our stuff, and you don't get any insight. We just give you the reports afterwards, but that's all. So cloud testing, and that refers to the title, that's not always the magic thing. So there are a lot of things you need to take into account and challenges you have to overcome in setting up cloud testing. And the last message, and sorry for the slang, cut the crap. And cut the crap, it's a bit English. It's for, okay, get to the point. Don't bullish. And that is reflecting me to the way I was reporting a lot in my projects. So imagine, and maybe it sounds familiar, you have this plenty of testing metrics. You gathered all this kind of information. You have very nice dashboards. And then you put it in a report. You come on those go-no-go meetings, and yeah, or the customer, they don't listen to you, they overrule you, but at least no one is really digging into the details, and you feel like, yeah, why did I put so many effort in bringing all this information together? And my first bleating reflect this, it's not my fault. It's the stakeholders. They don't want to listen. They don't have any clue about testing. But since it was a repeating thing, project over project, customer over customer, I thought, yeah, maybe I'm doing something wrong, or I have to do something in another way. And therefore, my message is, cut the crap. And CRUT stands for the famous, and that's the only test design technique that I actively apply, create, read, update, and delete. Because then I realized, and I had some chats with customers about it, yeah, we don't want to have all these metrics. Just give us an answer on those 4 main questions. If I put this in production, will I be possible to create? Will my customer be possible to create an order in my e-commerce web shop? And if he has ordered something, can he retrieve it? Can he consult the history afterwards? And maybe he needs to change his billing address because it's not the same as delivery address. And especially with the whole GDPR stuff, when that customer end user called to me and say, you have to forget about me, so please delete all the stuff, all the records you have from me in your database, then I should be able to delete. And then I thought, okay, yeah, that's, and that are the main things customers, business are interested in. And they don't know, they don't want to know, okay, did you have 100 test cases defined? Are there some maybe outstanding? Yeah, are they defects? Okay, but it's good that you tell me there are defects, but are we I'm not interested in the details. And I don't say that you don't need to have those details. Yes, but don't start with it as first thing to report. Report more on a general level. And that can helps you to define what I called the crap point. Because based on the book, Team Up is telling you you have to test and to be complete for 100%. Not possible. You all know this. Maybe thinking realistic, you can define what is the point that good is good enough. And of course, it will depend on the situation. Like this one, the one-off event. And then I have always to think at my favorite football club in Belgium. And when the new season is coming, then you can order a subscription for a seat. And that site is down already after 10 minutes. And on Facebook, a lot of complaints. And then maybe I think from an IT point of view, maybe you can think, yeah, should we really spend money in having a performant website, knowing that we will sell anyway all the seats? Okay, it gives some complaints, but our supporters or fans, anyway, they will have a seat, so they will have to have some patience. So in this case, you can say, okay, the most important things is they can log in, they can register, they can buy a seat, and they can pay. And that's the most important. And all the rest, I don't care. Home banking, that's another story. I don't know how the situation is here, but in Belgium, what we see is banks, they are closing all the physical offices, and they're moving everyone to digital banking through the app, through the website. Yeah. There you cannot just say, okay, if it's functionally okay, then it's okay. No, you have the app. It should be usable. It should be nice. It should be performant. It should be secure. So in this case, you will need to spend more effort. You will need to go for a higher level of test coverage compared to this situation. And that's together with the business that you can define what is for us the critical point and what is good enough. So that were 5 messages. I have more, but we have some limits in time. And the main message you have to remind tomorrow is, first of all, this was not the truth, it's just my view. But even if we have this massive, plenty information available, all the books, all the gurus, even the testing schools, don't always take it for granted. Dare to make your own theory, dare to make your own philosophy, your own thinking. And it can be that you grab good ideas from one side or another, but based on the situation where you are in, just look what is for me the best. And even if you come up with an approach which is totally, may sound weird or is not to the book, it don't mind. If it works for you, if it works for your project, if your team is happy with the approach, if you agreed, okay, this is the way we are doing, it can maybe sounds a little bit weird, but it works, then do it. Thank you.